OpenAI scraped YouTube, remember. So now it'll be interesting for them to take a position, oh, you can't scrape us. So it's a very interesting play, right?
Today, we'll be talking about DeepSeek, the recent innovation by a Chinese startup that has shaked up the US Silicon Valley and has routed several trillions of dollars from the stock market. The US tech giants are concerned. What do you think of this startup, and how do you think is the AI progress in China, and what the US startups are doing to counteract that right now?
Well, we saw that the stock market had an adverse reaction, right? But I think that they're overblown. First of all, DeepSeek was able to do things more efficiently. That's great. That drops the cost for everybody. So we should encourage that. Secondly, they did it in an open source manner. So that means that people can look on it and improve on it. So they're enabling people to do more with less resources. I think there's a lot of tricks in that software that was used to optimize it for performance. So they did things like, instead of using a generic library call, they hard coded in some of the direct calls into the hardware. So i.e., they had direct access to the hardware, and that way it made the software more efficient. Number one. Number two, what they did was that they utilized basically OpenAI to then through a process that would basically, you take the OpenAI response to a particular prompt, and then you train your neural network on the prompt. So therefore, you shortcut a lot of direct training, and that's how they achieve their smaller size and achieve a comparable performance. So there's a lot of tricks that they did that actually is known in the industry, but it just so happened that they're the first to pull it together in a way that challenged OpenAI. So from OpenAI's perspective, what did they do about this? Well, on one hand, OpenAI was trained using the internet data. And I think it'll be very interesting to see now how OpenAI is going to say, oh, well, I was trained on public data, but you can't be trained using my data. So a very
Well,
interesting dichotomy.
yes,
Yes.
Mr. Tran, you mentioned this that they said that we are trained on internet data, but you can't be training on our data. But this thing that you mentioned that they may have used OpenAI to improve their software, but Microsoft security researchers also thought that this was possible, and OpenAI went out and alleged this. So did Vinod Khosla, an investor at OpenAI. But it does violate OpenAI's API's terms of service, right? So if they did it, it must have been a criminal act, or am I missing something?
Well, I think that's up to OpenAI to decide. But sure, I mean, yeah, I mean, so they use OpenAI to train their network, and so the question then is, what is that result? Is that blocked by copyright? I think it'd be very interesting because on one hand, OpenAI is telling the world, oh, it's fair use. We are free to go and scrape your data. OpenAI scraped YouTube, remember. So now it'll be interesting for them to take a position, oh, you can't scrape us. So it's a very interesting play, right? But fundamentally, I see all this as a good thing for the world because it induces competition, right? It's a race, and so whenever there's a race, I think we all benefit from it because we'll gain access to things that are cheaper and better and things like that. And so, to me, I look at it a big picture, and that's the other thing that I give a plug to for patenting. So obviously, you can gain exclusivity through patenting. OpenAI generally so far has been relying on trade secret, and that's tough because if once the secret's out, the secret is out. And so I think that's, to me, it spells a very powerful argument for patenting of AI software and processes and the architecture of doing that.
To continue on this thought, DeepSeek's entire code and the entire architecture of the the recent innovation, all of this is open source. So could you explain the intellectual property protection that is afforded to DeepSeek now that their entire software and their innovation and their code base is open source? So what is the IP implications?
Yes. Well, open source doesn't necessarily mean you don't have IP. Many companies patent their open source so that they can control the open source, right? So if you look at Meta or Facebook, the code is open source, but they say for a certain use, a number of use. Beyond that, you got to go and get a license from Meta. So I think there are different layers of open source. And the way I would do that is you need to balance your strategic marketing plan on growing your customer base against the business model that you're going to seek. So it appears for Facebook, for the Llama open source model, you're free to use it up to a certain size. So that means that, let's say, if you happen to be the next, let's say, YouTube the user of Llama, you're going to have to pay. It's not open source to you. So I think you need to use a combination of trade secret, copyright, and patents to selectively chisel out your open source model. And that's only really mainly is for the foundational architectural level. I think a lot of the innovation is actually coming above that, that relies on the output of the architectural level. So you would have applications, like you say, let's say in farming that would use the AI. So those are specific uses of the AI engine, and you can, you definitely have to patent those because it gives your business the exclusivity and the control of your future. The use of open source, I think, is very good. But when you deploy that specific to your application, that changes the equation because now it's your specific business model. It's no longer a foundation that everybody can chip in and share. If that makes any sense.
Yes, that was interesting, especially the fact that even though it is open source, it can be protected by multiple layers of IP protection. Now that you also mentioned that this innovation by DeepSeek seems to be a net positive for the AI race because there's more competition in the market. But with more competition, there are several researchers at OpenAI who are coming out and quitting. One happened quite prominent recently, who are mentioning that with this competition, the AI companies seem to be neglecting their safety guardrails and just moving forward and taking more and more risks with especially a technology that has the potential to eradicate humanity because we do not know how we can control something that is more intelligent than us. What do you think of this and the ethics and the law behind it?
Yes, I do think we need to think carefully and go, with the control use of the AI. Having said that, I think we're a long way from general AI, intelligence. Right? It is not yet capable of thinking on its own. At present, all it is this being trained on the global knowledge of the internet. And so I think we're still a long way from doing that, and from being a machine that can be a danger to humanity. I think that as we improve, maybe 5, 10 years from now, that point may reach where it becomes its own intelligent capability, thinking more, coming up with things that are more than what it's being trained on. But at present, it's really rehashing what we know in general and restating it in response to our question. So I haven't seen evidence of that, but of course, in dangerous applications, like let's say in the military, you probably wouldn't want to deploy an AI to go and control your gun. And so there are, I think, the guardrail should be, at dangerous areas like medical, military, maybe flying a plane that might be, you might need to know more about how it's controlled. But right now, I don't see that we're anywhere close to that yet.